Shalom.
Shalom and be one family.
This is Black Ice.
This is Akis. And we're here again. You know, it's honestly good to be back. You know, I've been gone for a while. But this is a topic that I feel like, you know, we kind of breached it with the sermon that was done before I went off to D.C.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot more to add to it now. Given the fact that, you know, me and Black Ice, we went through a situation with a congregation that we were a part of that, you know, kind of sparked this kind of discussion and this kind of looking into people that follow the cause versus people that follow the leader. Because I believe the best, you know, case studies are the ones that you go through yourself. And there were certain patterns that I started to notice that were occurring not only within our congregation, but within a lot of others. And I'll use a very specific example. For instance, there's a very large and notable congregation within the Hebrew Israelite community known as the IUIC. And I actually had the opportunity to visit the IUIC in DC. And it was me and a brother of mine. And we went, and when I tell you, it was about as welcoming as you know, maybe a cage of jackals, man. You know, and here's, because I don't want to be disparaging. I would say that 90% of the people in that building truly want to follow Yah. I would say that 90, if not 95% of them truly want to follow Yah. The issue that we have, and this is, you know, of course, a case study, but it delves into a deeper issue within the black community of how we follow these leaders instead of following the cause. Now, do I believe that it's important to be a part of a congregation? If you need a base, of course, you know, or if you feel like you need a family or what have you, of course it's good to be a part of a congregation. It's good to be a part of a movement. It's good to be a part of anything. But you got to have the cause embedded in your core. Because if not, as soon as the leader's gone or as soon as that family aspect and all these things are gone, you're going to be washed away. And you're not going to have a solid base. So we, over the duration of this broadcast, a warning to the children and the leaders of Israel, and Israel referring to, you know, the black people of the diaspora of the transatlantic slave trade, I want to kind of hone in on this idea of the cause versus the leaders, just like we did with the examination of cults, because this cult mentality is something that we have to separate ourselves from. Because it's not only about the repercussions of these things. It is, we are going to be looking into a symptom of the disease. The disease being the fact that we are not able to attach ourselves to a cause without needing a face, a leader, a person to lead us in this cause, which also means that we don't have the cause within us. You know, for instance, when you could look at multiple examples when great leaders were killed, and black folk, we just fell on our backs. We're just done with the cause because there's nobody to lead us. Not understanding if we had this embedded within us, we would have been continuing that legacy, teaching our kids this legacy, and the corruption of a leader would not be that strong of a factor within our community if this weren't the case, because the cause is stronger than any leader.
Right.
You know. So let's go into the story. So me and my brother, we go into the IUIC. First off, I called ahead of time, and it still was a process to get in. You know, I went inside. I was pat down.
So it's a one of the warming experience of visiting a church. You just come in and fellowship. You had to go through a whole different process.
I was pat down. I was my belongings were all looked through. I was They of course, question your intentions and all that.
Boy, it sounds like you going to TSA and the customs.
Oh man, I think TSA was a lot easier. Would be a lot easier to go.
It sounds like it.
They had a metal detector ran on me. They asked for identification. They took our photos. It was a lot that we went through just to get within that building.
Wow.
Yeah, and then during the sermon.
Wait, before you can get to that, because they try to go through your wallet and stuff too?
No, I didn't bring it.
Yeah, what did they try? Did they try to identify?
Yeah, they wanted to identify.
Yeah.
Like they were honing in on the fact
so
that they wanted government names.
So like what church do you visit? They ask for ID, or they need to know your real name, or they need to know why you're there.
But here's the wild thing about it. They said we have soldiers in the street 365, 24/7. So you're trying to recruit people, but then you recruit them and you have this air of exclusivity. That is the first step, isolation. Isolation. You are separated from the outside world. And we are keeping you safe within here. And we're doing this, and they were emphasizing, we're doing this for your safety, for all our safeties. So,
and what's the purpose of doing all this in their mind?
Safety. But that's the thing.
Or they thought you were a mold, or like they thought you were fed.
Right.
Even though they are a 501c3.
We're gonna get into that aspect. Yeah. We're gonna get into that aspect.
Or the fact that they think they're smart enough to spot a Fed.
Yeah.
Like these people are trained to infiltrate movements that they've done for years, decades.
Well, who's to say if?
Well, actually, they probably fed, acting like thinking they switches of you.
And that was really interesting because during the sermon, they kept bringing up the whole thing of spying, spies. Your wife might be a spy, you don't even know it. Or there's certain cases where both of them are spies.
So you already had a feeling of paranoia entering the building.
Yeah.
Not a warm feeling of being around your brothers and sisters or family. You coming in feeling like, it's a paranoid. They have you on your toes.
They have you everybody's on their toes because they're suspicious of you and you're suspicious of them.
Already, first visit.
Already. Because you're already coming in, you're being patted down, you're being questioned, all these different things are going or occurring already. So you're already on edge. And then as you walk through, everybody's looking at you like, who are they? What's going on with them? What are you here for? Where are you from?
And like, what they need to know your government name. It's almost like going to somewhere they make you like you're not just testing for the C thing.
Yeah.
You need to know their real name and the Hebrew name.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Like, what's the purpose of that? Why you need to know?
And they did the same thing because the C thing, mind you, these are places where people are supposed to have faith. Yet they want to of course if you want to check somebody's temperature, make sure they're not sick. If you're sick, don't go to an assembly. Makes sense. But once they start bringing up documents and they want you to sign your legal name along with your
Come
Hebrew
to the door.
name, yeah, you know what I mean? You got to read off this document. Start getting dicey. Why are they collecting this information?
That's not a welcoming environment either.
Why are they collecting this information?
Yes.
It sounds like it's for a database, right?
That would sound like to me.
So, I go in, sat down with these brothers, fellowship the best I could. And when I tell you, just the sermon was just paranoia.
For hours.
Hours. And it was one of those things where it was this, we are right 100% and everybody else is wrong. There's no kind of discussion. There's no kind of in between. They said if your kid disagrees with you, or like you should be able to just kick him out. Various things that
can't question anything. No discussions about anything unless you just 100% agree.
And also, a big thing that they were pushing was the reverence of the bishops, the 3 bishops.
Wow. So they always you put them on a pedestal.
Yeah, constantly. And that's what's constantly shown is this reverence for of course, you were a good leader. But there is a line where they start to become the godlike figure. You reveal and you respect your leaders. But when it starts becoming just about the leaders, because they kept honing in on the leaders. And it's like, are we supposed to be in this book? Trying to figure out how to live amongst each other. You know what I mean? If we're supposed to be ruling one day, how to rule, you know, without having an iron fist.
Mm-hmm.
How do you treat your brother peaceably? And that's just, you know, my personal critiques.
Mm-hmm.
But you start getting into the minutia and the fact that they had military style pants on and they had boots to military spec. And they were doing rotations every hour, like a militarized body. And then as well as the fact that they refer to themselves by various military names.
Like Officer blah blah.
Right.
General blah blah.
And one of the strangest things that my brother noticed was they had a cabinet that said, I don't remember verbatim, but basically along the lines of not suitable for storage of confidential information.
So yeah, classified documents.
Of classified information, I mean.
Right.
Yeah. So
it doesn't fulfill. No, you know what? You skipped the part. So even when they're, you know, because you know within the Israelite faith, it's about modesty.
Yeah.
You know, so but you like they're shaking you down like you're the TSA or like customs, right?
That's right. Because the way they were shaking me down, they were, you know, they felt around. They had me take off my belt. They felt around that area, and then they also had it where I had to raise the back of my shirt and the front of my shirt to the point where they were able to see my navel.
Did they put you to the side to do that, or they did that in front of?
They did it in front of 3 sisters that were right there, the same ones that took my temperature. And then when I tried to discreetly put my belt back on, they said, "Oh no, brother, we don't do that here. There's a bathroom."
Now you're worried about being modest now. I think it just kind of shows your ass in front of them.
I mean, you already made me give them a show, and here I am trying to put back my belt discreetly. It's like, nah. Now we implement modesty. Come on, man. And basically, you saw that we saw the cabinet. It's like, why would they need classified information?
Right.
And then there was another thing. They had the ear things that they used.
Oh, like little secret agents.
Yeah, and they were talking to each other on walkie-talkies.
In this church, in this congregation, in this camp.
Yeah, and all the leaders had the newest iPhones. Where they get all that money?
Oh, so that like I guess they have their work phone, per se.
I guess, but my brother noticed that every single leader had the newest iPhone.
So they all synced up.
They were all synced up. Not only that, the newest iPhone is expensive.
Yeah.
How is it that every single one of you are able to afford this? And it was a lot of equipment. It was a lot of stuff that went into that. Mind you, this is, I mean, of course it was a DC location, but this is in PG County. You know, it was a good bit of people. But this is just.
But you know, not even the pocket watch. You're considering that this organization been around for about 2 decades.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at like and that's fast.
Right.
You know, considering like Amazon is about 20, 25 years old.
Yeah.
Right. So it's about the same age as this organization here.
Yeah.
And somehow you have these camps placed in damn near every state in the 4 countries internationally.
And,
that's
right.
fast. That's fast growth. That's faster than even black mega church.
To the point where
mega church.
They're in Russia now. They're probably they're in Russia. They're in multiple countries, and yet you got our people that are thinking that this is some sort of grassroots organization.
Yeah, that means funding comes from somewhere else.
Right.
Because that's fast growth. Cause even Olstein don't have growth like that.
Right.
He has a church in every state in 4 countries.
Mm-hmm. So I needed to go there to kind of have, because we already went through our personal experience with the congregation we were at. I went there and I was like, this is an issue across not only just dealing specifically with Hebrew Israelites, but also when it comes to just black folk overall, when it comes to our people overall, getting so caught up in the whirlwind of emotions of, you know, figuring out the truth, you know, learning all these different things, because I do believe that we are in a time of black awakening. I do believe that we are in that time. And A lot of people are going to wake up and they're going to be happy to have woken up. But the issue is, where are you going to go?
Yeah, people out there trying to take advantage of that.
Exactly. And so when I went into that camp, there were so many good-hearted brothers, and good-hearted brothers and sisters, and I know that they generally have a zeal for Yah. They generally have a zeal for the cause. The issue is, it is paired up with this building. It's paired up with this leader. And that was another thing that I saw with the congregation we came from. It was, and we're going to get into it, of course, a little later, but it was strongly associated with this idea of this building is your salvation, and this leader is your Moses. This leader is going to be your Moses to lead you to the promised land. They're not going to show you the direction.
Right.
They are going to be the in-between. They're going to make intercession for you. They are the one that you need to adhere to completely.
And if they don't like you, there's no way you can get it.
No. If they dislike you, then you're going to burn.
Right.
Yeah. So you have these various mindsets in these congregations, and this is where I kind of want to segue into the first part of this I guess series at this point. Along with the great awakening of black folk, you're also seeing, when you wake up, you got to catch your bearings. You got to figure out your condition. You got to figure out the room and everything. And we're starting to see that we are dealing with a great mental illness crisis, where a lot of us have these issues that we don't want to talk about, that we just think are normal or just idiosyncrasies, not realizing that slavery and different mindsets that were passed down and different traumas that were passed down have caused us to have certain dispositions. And
and not only so much that, and this for the red flags that people should look out for that try to take advantage of your seeking for knowledge and its truth.
Yeah, and this is where the two converge, because oftentimes when we think about mental health in the black community, we just think about just the layman, not realizing that a lot of these leaders are dealing with their own mental health issues that make them unfit to lead. It makes them unfit to lead, but because they have such a persona, because they have such an air about them, because they have such a following, we don't realize that these mental manifestations are going to cause a lot of heartache. They're going to cause people to get manipulated. They're going to cause people to get harmed, or people to get isolated from their families, isolated from the ones they loved, in order to cleave onto these people who are sick in the mind, and are leading. Because if you are going through your own thing, make sure to get help. But what do you do when it's the leader that has this psychosis? When it's the leader that has this disposition? What do you do when there's hundreds of people that are under his influence?
Sometimes thousands.
Sometimes thousands. Thousands of people.
And they already don't have good intentions anyway, which makes it worse. And
it's really sad, because the leaders are no different when it comes to struggling with. Matter of fact, they're more inclined to have these issues. But I believe birds of a feather, and because so many of us have these issues, we start to cleave onto these sick leaders. And I've noticed, this is something that I even noticed with the congregation that we came from. Oftentimes, their most devoted people that will follow them off a cliff like a lemming have just as bad, admittedly, diagnosed bad mental conditions as the leader, who's currently undiagnosed, but people that are bipolar or depressed, and because they haven't gotten a chance to take care of their issue, or
even if they have, are they wise enough or selfless enough to step down from their position?
Right.
No, they're not fit to lead.
But even when it comes to the people that are following, like and one of the articles that we're going to get into talks about it a little later, but it talks about that kind of mirror effect, because the leader gains power from the crowd, and the crowd gains power from the leader, and it's just horrible, just wave of raw emotion that's going back and forth, and it oftentimes leads into, destructive tsunami, really. And yeah, this is definitely, a touchy subject. But I feel like this is something that we definitely need to preach.
And we do it out of love. Because and despite these bad experiences, we still in the faith. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right.
Because to your point, we wasn't following the leader, we following the cause.
Exactly.
And also to your point, oftentimes when that leader falls, they fall.
Yeah.
The people fall, but that was never our purpose from the get go.
Exactly.
But we just had to be careful that because so many of these leaders are taking advantage of people who are trying to wake up and learn these things, and people would take advantage of that and try to manipulate for their own selfish reasons.
Right.
And we want to avoid that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the reason why we're doing breaking out the different parts now. Even this part here is we just throwing out some red flags you should look for, or things you may have seen, let you know, like, you're not crazy, you are seeing red flags.
Yeah.
And it's probably the time to get out now before it affects you or your family even more.
Yep.
And then what it is.
Because I've seen families fall apart because people are so dedicated to not the cause, but the leader. But the leader will say, "Oh, that's because you converted to this or you converted to that." It's like, nah. It's how you approach them.
Yeah.
It's the fact that you started to take this man and now he's leading your household. But when you look at his household, it's falling apart. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? When you look at how he's dealt with his marriage or his children or his his finances, you start to realize, oh dang, this brother ain't doing too hot. Mm-hmm. But you know what? He's a religious leader, so hey, let's go talk to him. Not so. Not wise. Now, if we could, let's go into the first part, because, let's kind of, because we always hear the term, a narcissist or what have you, but let's kind of bring it into the context of the church, bring it into the context of congregations, and kind of demystify and show the signs of various narcissistic leaders. And we don't just throw this out, and mind you, we're not mental health professionals.
Right.
We're putting this out there so that you, first off, don't end up victim of somebody that's struggling with a mental health issue. And if you are close to a victim or somebody that is struggling with a mental health issue, refer them to a mental health professional. Get them diagnosed. Get them looked into. Have them look into therapy. Try to be proactive, because these things surmount and they oftentimes get worse.
Or if that's the leader, you get away.
Get away.
Get away. Leave their own devices. Like just get
like Kanye West, run away.
Yeah,
as fast as you can.
Take care of yourself and your family.
Right.
Because they're not the type of environment. They're not the type of people you want to be around, and you don't want to be that type of environment. Mm-hmm. And they're going to prevent you from growing in your faith.
Exactly.
In that cause. So, and that's another reason why we're doing this. So, you only get caught up in some of these same situations, and you are in a situation that you're not alone, and there is a way out of it.
Exactly.
You will be okay to leave that situation.
And I've had to tell multiple people, but I'm not sure how much they believe me. Yah is not confined to four walls.
Facts.
Why would you think that the creator of all things, your salvation is somehow tied in with a building and a man?
It wasn't Apostle Saul going house to house?
Yeah.
Himself?
Exactly. The prophets went from village to village. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we don't even realize that multiple times the temple has been defiled because of the wickedness of the leaders.
Facts.
So let's go into this first one right here.
Alright. Copy.
And this one talks about narcissistic personality disorder.
Okay. Cool. All right, the hallmarks of narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, is grandiosity, a lack of empathy for other people, and a need for moderation. People with this condition are frequently described as arrogant, self-centered, manipulative, and demanding. They may also have grandiose fantasies and may be convinced that they deserve special treatment. These characteristics typically begin in early adulthood and must be consistently evident in multiple contexts, such as work and in relationships.
Which we've seen multiple times.
People with NPD often try to associate with other people they believe are unique and gifted in some way, which can embrace their own self-esteem. They tend to seek excessive admiration and attention and have difficulty tolerating criticism or defeat. Although NPD is a difficult disorder to treat, therapy can help those with the condition develop a sense of self and their relationships. NPD refers to diagnosable mental order, while the term narcissism is a trait that ranges in degree from person to person.
Right, and it truly is sad when you kind of look into how this disorder within a leader can affect the people of the congregation, because these various delusions of grandeur and all these different things that they entertain, people start to take on these different delusions. For instance, the pastor of or pastor priest, how he wants to refer to himself, of the last congregation that we were at, he started to push out in various forms a narrative where he was above everybody in the congregation. You are not equal to me. I have a different footing with Yah than you do. And so you cannot question me, you cannot disagree with me, and you cannot even converse with me. Who are you? And the crazy thing about it is you're like, oh, it's freaking arrogant. That's one thing. But people started to hold that to heart. And one time, it was this one sister who, has her own issues that was saying, and mind you, you start to have a culture of pass-a-said. Because there used to be a time when it was like, scripture says this, scripture says that. Oftentimes we're too lazy to read scripture. So it started to become, well, priest said this. You remember when priest said that? And the priest said this, and the priest said that. It became a Christian church in everything but name. And this one sister, she sent off a message saying how, well, with a couple scriptures that you're probably fed to or what have you, but it was basically putting out that you cannot question the priest. You cannot come towards the priest, and remember, family, we are not equal to our priest. We are not.
And that was the message she was putting out.
That she was putting out. And the scary thing about it is you had a list of single mothers, following behind her saying, amen, 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 amen.
Sound like Christian church.
Sound like the Christian church. Yeah, built just like the Christian church. So oftentimes, what are the demographics in the Christian church?
Yeah, we mostly women. Single women.
Yeah. That are lost and need a surrogate husband. So the pastor becomes that surrogate husband. And it's unfortunate because these delusions start to be disseminated amongst the sanctuary, amongst the camp. But let me see if we could. Yeah, we could go into this and then hop into the next article.
Okay. The symptoms: a grandiose sense of self-importance, preoccupation with fantasies of limited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. Belief that one is special and can only be understood by or associate with special people or institutions. A need for excessive admiration, a sense of entitlement to special treatment, aspiration of others, a lack of empathy, envy of others, or the belief that one is the object of envy, arrogant, haughty behavior or attitudes.
Yeah.
Individuals with NPD can be easily stunned by criticism or defeat and may react with disdain or anger, but social withdrawal or the false appearance of humility may also following, according to the DSM-5. A sense of entitlement, disregard for other aspects of NPD can damage relationships. While a person with NPD may be a high achiever, the personality disorder can also have a negative impact on performance due to, for instance, one's sensitivity to criticism.
Because you can't build anything if you're not. And it's funny because these same people will be like, I don't want a bunch of yes men.
Yeah.
I don't want a bunch of people saying yes. They don't yes man. Well, you say yes to me, I don't believe you. But then you see how they operate. It's like, no, you were lying.
Yeah.
You wanted nothing but yes, man, and that's what you got.
And you can't grow from that.
You cannot.
Researchers have reported association between NPD and high rates of substance abuse, mood, and anxiety disorders. These may be attributable to characteristics such as impulsivity and the increased experience of shame in people with NPD. The presence of narcissistic traits in adolescence does not necessarily imply that a person will have NPD as an adult.
Mm-hmm. Now we could hop to the next one because this was a very enlightening article right here.
All right. And the name of the article is Find Narcissism in the Church.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they got blocked off here. And get right here. I thought I had a burp here. I was sitting in the airport about 2 years ago when I overheard a conversation between a mom and her preteen daughter. Okay. As an anxious mother scurried to repack a carry-on before boarding, she kept calling out, "Maddie, Maddie, I need your help, Maddie." Meanwhile, young Maddie was sat peering at her iPhone, alternating facial gestures and poses, smiling and perking up, oblivious to her mom's pleas. Finally, with a voice raised for the entire terminal to hear, the mother yelled, "Maddie, you're such a narcissist." It's a word we're hearing a lot these days, whether it's spoken about politicians or pastors, celebrities, or social media savvy teens. It's alive in our common discourse. And on that day at the airport, it struck me as ironic and perhaps a bit provisional.
Providential.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was sitting with my laptop open, proofing the manuscript for a book I was writing on narcissism. Nowadays, we label people freely. She's a liberal. He's an addict. They're racist. He's a narcissist. In an increasingly polarized world, we're more apt than ever to brand and categorize, alienating us even more from one another. I agree with Marilyn McIntyre, who writes that caring for language is a moral issue. In her book, Caring for Language in a Culture of Lies, McIntyre says caring for one another is not entirely separable from caring for words. Words are entrusted to us as equipment for our life together, help us survive, guide, and nourish one another. In the airport that day, I realized again how important this is. Over my 25 years of ministry, I've become increasingly concerned about narcissism in the church. About 5 years ago, I decided it was time for a serious conversation, one that transcended amateur diagnosis and cheap labeling. As a pastor, I have been on the inside of narcissistic cultures in churches. As a therapist and psychological assessor of pastors and church planters, I was seeing warning signs all over the place. My concern was for pastors, particularly in the culture that seemed addicted to platform, influence, success, power, and relevance. But I could also see what lurked in the shadows. People confused and abused by narcissistic leaders, the brief fields of pain around seemingly successful ministries, and even the shadow side of pastors who shone on Sunday morning but battled shame, depression, addiction, and thoughts of suicide when the church lights went off.
And you see it affects everybody involved. And none of these situations are going to go unanswered.
Right.
Because, people often think that, whatever, because here's the thing, if you're really that narcissistic, you think that God is on your side. You think that everything you're doing is ordained by God because you are, in a sense, your own God.
Mm-hmm.
But when things start to fall apart, that might be your sign that, hey, you need to ease up off the brakes. Okay. So none of these things are going to go unanswered, and everybody suffers in these situations.
Man, go to the definition here.
Mm-hmm.
All right, word narcissism. The preteen at the airport likely did not meet the diagnostic indicators of narcissistic personality disorder. What her mother noticed was a caricature of narcissism. I asked some of my seminary students how they describe a narcissist, and they use words like self-centered, arrogant, and proud. Maybe you offer similar descriptors, but what is NPD? NPD is a serious diagnosis, a disorder of the personality that is often traced to a combination of the inherited disposition and significant dysfunction in childhood. When you hear disorder, you may immediately think about the more common mood and anxiety disorders: depression, bipolarism, panic, social phobias. These are often treatable with the right therapy, support, and even medications. But personality disorders are altogether different. They're not curable or even treatable with a short-term therapy or medications. You don't read a book and get over it. It doesn't go away with a confession of sin. NPD is categorized clinically by the grandiose sense of oneself, a lack of empathy for others, an entitlement to affirmation or attention, and ruptures in family and work relationships. Psychological professionals use a combination of testing, personal interviews, and assessment tools to determine if someone meets the criteria in PD. We do this in the spirit of Marilyn McIntyre, I hope, with great care and guided by a desire to label someone, but a desire for truth in the inmost being. NPD's theological roots go back to Genesis 3. Adam and Eve's original temptation was to be like God, transcending their God-ordained creatureliness. Christopher, in his best-selling book, The Culture of Narcissism, said narcissism is a longing to be free from longing. In other words, the narcissist cannot tolerate the limitations of his humanity and ultimately refuses to live within God-ordained limitations of a creaturely existence. Yet, here's a paradox. Our desire to be superhuman dehumanizes us, wreaks havoc on our relationships, and turns us on ourselves.
And that's the irony of when it comes to these various dispositions and the various ailments. The goal of the ailment oftentimes gets you further and further from the actual mark that you want to reach.
Yeah.
So it becomes a curse.
Adam and Eve grasped, and we've been grasping ever since. Adam and Eve hid, and we've been hiding ever since. That's the general plight of humanity. But here's the difference for those with NPD. They never come out of hiding. Indeed, their fig leaf mask up, self-protected shells are all we see. Often psychologically enslaved to profound shame and terror, they're afraid to open themselves, instead armoring up to survive in a threatening world. The characteristics of narcissistic leaders. So you may be reading this and thinking, surely narcissists don't become pastors. Pastoral leadership requires humility at the core. I agree. When I think of pastoral leadership in particular, I'm drawn back to Philippians 2 and the description of an incarnate we can call Yeshua, who in the very nature of God did not consider equality with God something to be grasped. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man. He humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even on a cross.
And that is such a true humbling. You know, you have, Israel that took the form of Yeshua, a spirit that took the form of a body, and was humbled in that way and experienced being human. The issue you see with a lot of the leaders is they are human trying to become like a spirit, trying to step above being human. Even this last priest that we had at the congregation, he would oftentimes say, I'm not a man, I'm a priest. I'm not a man, I'm a priest. So that made him above regular man.
Oh, and almost like trying to portray yourself, you're also trying to portray yourself as perfect until you can't be questioned.
There's
no flaws. Adam and Eve grasped, the narcissist grasps, but Yeshua refused to grasp, becoming a servant instead. That's a longing for pastors and leaders, but what is it that we see in our leaders? And that's true, because how many of them can we say are actually trying to be a servant?
Exactly.
They're so busy trying to be on that pedestal, and they're not trying to be a servant to the people where they should be.
And it's funny because even with of course it's referring to the congregation. They would push this culture of seat dwellers. You know what I mean? And seat dwellers was somebody that wasn't serving the church. But what is the church doing to serve the community? So you're serving the church by, working on a documentary that doesn't come out, or, clean a bathroom or what have you. What is the church doing for the community, though? Because if they're not serving the people, then what are your works going into?
If you're supposed to be like Christ, if you're trying to be like Yeshua, he stayed out there.
He was constantly trying to reach the people, and he knew how to meet them.
And he purposely looking for the unbelievers.
Yeah, exactly. And he was willing to meet people where they're at.
Yeah.
He would be talking to the prostitutes and the publicans. Meanwhile, everybody else was like, how could you do that? Because it wasn't good for appearances. But you see and you notice that these different camps or these different leaders are so into their appearances. They cannot serve the people. They want the people to serve them.
An older colleague of mine heard about my work on this and pulled me aside one day. He said, you know, Chuck, I've been in seminary education for 30 years. 90% of the general public doesn't like public speaking, but we get the rare few that not only enjoy being on stage, but feel comfortable saying, this is the word of the Lord. His word rings true. I've done hundreds of psychological assessments for pastors. The assessments include long narratives, personality tests, and assessments of clinical disorders. What I found is stunning. The vast majority of pastoral candidates show elevations in the category of cluster B personality disorders. I'll call this the Narcissism Family. It is a cluster of disorders that feature dramatic, attention-seeking behavior, along with a heavily armored personality that protects them from anything that makes them feel vulnerable. The two disorders with the most elevated results are narcissistic and histrionic personality disorders, two close cousins in the Narcissism family.
So you're seeing that there's a certain leaning for people in those, just like you have various stereotypes of, you know, construction workers or librarians or people that work the docks or whatever career, doctors, lawyers. You have certain stereotypes about the kind of people that are attracted to these jobs. Because oftentimes there is a certain kind of person that is attracted to these jobs. Artists, you know, certain people attracted to these jobs. Same thing when it comes to the ministry. People that call themselves, people that want to accrue a certain crowd, you know, and aren't in it for, you know, the actual cause or the word. You oftentimes see that there is a certain personality type that is attracted to having a bunch of people not only see them, but revere them in a certain way. And if they weren't doing that, they would be doing something else, you know? For instance, like, as far as attention seeking, maybe in their past life, they tried to be a comedian and weren't good at that. You know, they weren't good at it, so that failed. Or they tried to be a rapper and they weren't good at that. They weren't good at that either, so they failed. And now they're trying to be a priest. You know,
somewhere somewhere to be on the stage being admired. It's a different type of stage.
Somewhere to be on a stage with a mic in front of their mouth, and you constantly see that. I remember a brother of mine was sitting outside the Smithsonian, and this woman came up to him. She's like, "Oh, have you ever heard of, you know, the Lord Jesus Christ?" You know, it was that kind of thing. So he actually entertained a conversation with her for a bit, and he was talking with her. And when he had any kind of apprehension about coming to her congregation, she just lit him up and was just attacked him. And he was really put off from it. He was just like, you know what? I'm not talking about my religious beliefs with a stranger. I'm done. So later on, he has a conversation with me, and he was just talking about how jarring that was for somebody to come, supposedly you're wanting to enlighten me on, you know, the good truth, but you really didn't give a damn about my salvation, your salvation, anybody's salvation, really. You just wanted to be self-righteous. You just wanted to preach to somebody and be on a moral high horse. And I told him, look, she just found religion. Because she was going to be that anyways. Be it, you know, let's say she an environmentalist, animal rights activist, you know, somebody working for the LGBT, or somebody that's, you know, pro, you know, feminist, or what have you.
The personality has never been the same.
Exactly. She just needed a cause that gave her the platform to express that self-righteousness. That was just what she found. So I told him, different people find religion. You got people that want to genuinely attain salvation, want to genuinely be good people, want to genuinely advance in life and enlighten themselves and others. And then you have those that they found religion because they failed at everything else. And this just allows them to scratch their itch.
Yeah, they let you know they're doing it for the wrong reasons.
Exactly.
Does it stop right here?
Yeah.
That might sound alarming, so a bit more clarity may help. Elevation in the narcissism spectrum does not make one diagnosticably a narcissistic. I'm often asked if a narcissist or not is like an on and off switch. Either you have it or you don't. The reality is this: narcissism exists on a spectrum. Some have the full-blown flu, others have significant symptoms, and others just have the sniffles. Not every confident leader is narcissistic. Not everyone who enjoys applause is narcissistic. But it is telling that the vast majority of pastors test in this cluster of personality features. What do we see in pastors that show up narcissistically? I expanded on Craig and Carolyn Williford's helpful work on Troubled Church Ministries to offer these 10 features of narcissistic pastors, centering all decision making on themselves. Like everything had to go through them.
Yeah, every single thing.
Impatience or the inability to listen to others.
That's a big one. You can't converse with them. They wait for you to finish talking so that they can talk some more. They did everything that you said, just out one ear, out the other. Okay, cool. I have 3 points I can attack you on now.
Yep. Delegating without giving proper authority or with too many limits. Feelings of entitlement.
That's a big one.
Feeling threatened or intimidated by other talented staff.
I could give an example of that. I remember there was this one brother. There is this brother that is very big, and his channel is big and influential in the Hebrew Israelite community. He does some good stuff, and he came to our congregation in the past. This is long before the Black narrative, and he was working with the congregation in the media department because that's what he was really gifted at, and he went on to they collaborated. We collaborated on a documentary about Thanksgiving. So they uploaded the documentary and he did as well. And there was an issue because it was seen as, he's just trying to grow his own channel. But you already knew he had his own platform and he's trying to spread the word. So what's the issue?
He had good intentions.
But
the priest didn't.
Exactly. But because he was such a talented brother, instead of using his talent to try to push the word and bring people to the truth, the priest got intimidated and started attacking the man.
He couldn't put his name on it.
Yeah, exactly. Because he couldn't put the company's name, because it's a company now on the branding. So that is a very
and let you know their true intentions.
Exactly.
If the intention is to put out the truth, it doesn't matter. Like the guy's name on it because he actually did it.
Yeah,
that shouldn't be an issue. He did it. He financed it, produced it, wrote it, and everything.
Exactly.
So why is the issue that he don't want to put your name on it? You did nothing to contribute to it.
Exactly. But they claim to want to spread the word.
Yeah. Yep. Facts. Needing to be the best and brightest in the room.
Right.
Inconsistency and impulsiveness. Praising and withdrawing. Intimidating others. And forward vulnerability. Or fake vulnerability. I've seen these features in pastors of both small and large churches and across denominations. I consulted with a small Reformed church in the Midwest that had a pastor who were described as a bully, someone whose dogmatic certainty and arrogant and condescending and belittling persona drove away the small staff that he had. Ironically, the small church grew because of parishioners who characterized his disposition as bold, faithful, and courageous. But after a thorough assessment and testing scores that peaked high on the MPD scale, an older elder rightfully asked, how can someone so confidently speak of Yeshua but live so arrogantly?
And it's funny because this is even a huge disconnect I saw with the priests of the previous church, is because if you weren't their age or you didn't have, you didn't grow up in the areas they grew up or what have you, they would really think less of you. And it was to the point where he couldn't relate to me as a young man because he thought I was the dumbest thing in the room. He thought he was so dang smart. And he couldn't relate to young people because there was always this assumption of you're just not at my level. And heck, it was even hard for him to relate to the layman because there was an assumption of you're not at my level. I'm talking down to you.
To everybody.
Exactly. So there's this culture of if you are talking to me, I have something to teach you, but you have jack to teach me.
And that doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
In the large church I consulted with, the popular lead pastor who written 3 books and commanded a large social media following seemed too many to be a living saint, one whose winsome personality and communication style wooed his church. He often shared stories of his own struggles and his desire to be more like Yeshua. Meanwhile, his exasperated staff tiptoed around him, fearful of his angry outbursts and aware of his constantly shifting his expectations. Exhausted by his hypocrisy, in time, his Jekyll and Hyde demeanor became clear to an elder team who tried to remedy it with a sabbatical. But when revelations of emotional abuse in his marriage became public, it became even harder for the pastor to continue ministry. He left behind a wake of trauma, even as the defender spoke of the incredible fruit of his ministry.
And it's funny because, honing in on that abuse factor, oftentimes when you come across these different pastors and you start to see they have abusive patterns, when you look back into their relationship history or their familial history, you start to see that they have had a history of abuse. Abusing their wives or abusing anybody that's weaker than them. Mm-hmm. And so once an abuser, oftentimes that behavioral pattern keeps changing, but you'll have it shift in a way where you're now able to abuse within a religious setting,
So they can justify it.
Yep.
A nationally known Christian discipleship ministry, the president was called a bold woman of God in the Christian magazine that featured her strategic leadership of time of financial distress. However, those who served under her described someone who constantly needed acknowledgement for successes and even took credit for other innovative ideas.
Right.
Employees feared her wrath, but also spoke of a confusing, she loves you sometimes and hates you at other times dynamic. When emails were revealed that showed a pattern of belittling, lying, and manipulating, she resigned, portraying herself as a victim of distractors who didn't care about the gospel like she did.
So you notice that even after all that, she was the victim. She was the one being attacked. After all that lying, that's one big thing, belittling, manipulation. She was the one who was, being martyred.
Mm. Do you want to continue on with that one or you want to the next one?
Let me see. Yeah, because I think that's the last big thing, and I think it's pretty revealing.
Okay. Why do we follow them? All right, so this comes from a former CIA profiler and psychologist, Gerald Post. They've written extensively on narcissism, including books on Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. Post described narcissists as mirror-hungry, using their audiences and followers as a mirror to reflect back praise and admiration. Mm-hmm. The narcissistic leader's hidden shame and pervasive sense of emptiness is alleviated, perhaps only for a little while, by the applause of an adoring crowd or the affection of a devoted follower.
Mm-hmm. So you see how there's that back and forth. So it's going to explore it a little more.
But why are followers so devoted? According to Post, those drawn to narcissistic leaders are ideal-hungry people who so long for the ideal image of strength in another that they can't see or perhaps ignore the leader's shadow side, including the brief field of damage he causes. For many who see themselves as weak or incomplete, a powerful other can serve as the needed battery source.
And that's a sad thing, because that explains the dynamic between the mentally ill pastor and the mentally ill congregation, because it's one of those things where they look at him as a source of strength,
One pastor with a larger church planting network revered the network leader. He never heard anyone preach and teach with authority like this man. He was handpicked to work alongside the leader. The pastor felt as if God had especially chosen him for something significant, but he started to notice minor indiscretions. On occasion, the leader would feel entitled to leave a restaurant without paying or take items from staff offices without asking.
Because he's a man of God.
In time, the leader's sexual abuses of power were revealed. The pastor came to his defense. Later, he told me that even though he knew the leader was guilty, he couldn't imagine losing the sense of empowerment, significance, and purpose he felt when he was around him. He, the ideal hungry follower, was fixed on an ideal image of himself that he could only see through the lens of a narcissist.
And so once he lost that, he lost himself, because it is a very sobering thing when you got to sit down with yourself in the mirror and say, do I like what I'm seeing?
Yeah. Likewise, the whole groups of people and systems can consolidate around that narcissistic leader. They're more prone to happen in seasons when these groups feel particularly threatened. Groups at times plug into the energy, the power, the grandiosity, the dogmatic certainty of narcissistic leaders. Narcissistic religious leaders often use shame and guilt to keep their followers in a perpetual state of dependency, revealing the power of toxic theology in a service of narcissistic generosity.
And it's sad. This even goes back to a conversation I was having with this one brother, right? And I brought up the whole thing of groupthink and how it's not a good thing to have. And this brother was trying to tell me that, yes, this is what we want. We want to have groupthink. And I was explaining to him, like, no, it's not a good thing. But and this what was the culture that was being culminated at the church at the time.
Right.
We all need to think on one accord. We all need to think the same, not about spiritual issues,
right,
but about whatever beefs the priest has this week. So if it would be one thing if we all had groupthink when it came to a cause, but guess what? When it comes to the cause, you have your reasoning. You know your reasoning. And it's not dependent on a man or a body. Now, when it comes to groupthink in the sense of a congregation or church, then it starts becoming something where the pastor is the one that disseminates how we all think. So groupthink is actually thinking like him. So we could go ahead and jump into the next article here, and that is about narcissistic rage. I think it actually might be up there. Yeah.
All right, so what is narcissistic rage? So, here's the inward versus the outward signs of narcissistic rage. Inward, passive aggression, hidden resentment, sarcasm, entitlement. Outward, screaming and yelling, intense anger, intentionally harming others, rage in response to not getting attention.
And that hidden resentment is something else.
Yeah.
And when it comes boiling over, it's like, that's what it is.
Sarcasm.
Yeah.
Screaming and yelling. I guess right here. Narcissistic rage is a term that was coined by author Heinz Kohut in 1972 to refer to the tendency for people with narcissistic personality disorder to fly into a rage what might seem like the slightest provocation. Or no obvious, that's that right?
Provocation,
excuse me.
Yeah.
Provocation at all. People with NPD require that others give them consistent admiration and positive feedback. When this doesn't happen, it can elicit underlying feelings of shame that trigger an instant anger response and lashing out without care for how it impacts the recipient. It's a narcissistic skin and sensitivity that leads to this rage because of a deep-seated fear of being found out for not being the person they portray themselves to be. The signs. Are you wondering if someone you might know could be exhibiting signs of narcissistic rage, or are you somewhat aware that you may have the tendency yourself? If you're not sure, take a look at this list of signs and symptoms of narcissistic rage. While it may feel as though the attack is calculated, most often, narcissistic rage is reactive in nature. Episode of narcissistic rage derives from a threat to a person's sense of self and characterized by intense anger. In a relationship, for example, it can manifest in physical or verbal abuse, manipulation, or passive-aggressive behavior. Narcissistic rage is different from other forms of anger, and that narcissistic rage is disproportionate to the perceived slight.
Right.
It's as though the person has a hair-trigger response. It's completely out of proportion to what provoked it, and it often takes the other person by surprise. Narcissistic rage can be active or passive or corresponding outward or inward signs of the problem. Below are the signs and symptoms to watch out for.
And this is something that I want to touch on because, for instance, the way a narcissist will react to a situation will make other people honestly believe that you try to choke them. Like, for instance, with the church. And I remember I've been trying to have peaceable conversations with the pastor. And it got to the point where, heck, I remember during one of our meetings, at the end of the conversation, he acted like everything was good, everything was squared away, and the brother hugged me. He hugged me at the end of that meeting. That's how good the meeting went.
So you thought?
So I thought. Mind you, not even a couple months later, he held another meeting to pull me back into the drama. So it was one of those things where every little disagreement, and I let him know I don't agree, and I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing, and that's fine. We just agree to disagree, and we're going to continue, and everything's cool. And it kept being about the same thing. It was about the same exact thing until he wanted a certain result, and that result being me not being a part of the Black narrative.
Right.
And because I was not going to stop that, it became a constant issue. But he would dress it up as me being disrespectful, and I'm like, I barely interact with you, my brother. I barely interact with this dude. And every time I try to interact with him, I try to be rational, peaceful, hear him out, and try to actually converse.
But he will try to exert his control over you and dictate it. You know, it doesn't satisfy his particular desires.
Exactly. But every single disagreement became exaggerated, and he started to fly into a rage. Started talking about me and my family in sermons. Same thing he did with you and your family. And it became a constant thing. That's them flying into the rage. And on top of it, you're behind the altar spilling your poison. Something you got to answer for.
And something that they're supposed to love you. It's supposed to love you like a brother.
Right.
You know, but they treat you worse than an enemy. The outward signs. Go up here. Mouths are raised but not given the attention the attention they feel deserved. Screaming, yelling, angry or explosive outbursts, intense anger, sudden fits of anger, becoming verbally or physically aggressive, inability to control the rage, intensely trying to inflict pain, emotional, physical, on others. Inward signs of passive aggression, giving the silent treatment, withdrawing or being aloof, avoiding someone, hidden resentment, neglecting to do things, using sarcasm to cut people down. Oh, that's a big one. Righteous indignation.
Riotous.
A sense of entitlement, become a hostile or bitter, cutting people off as a means to protect their self-esteem, and dissociation of feeling disconnected from reality. Yeah.
We could go ahead and go into the. You know, we could go ahead and touch on.
You want to go to?
Yeah, we can go to the next article.
Right.
These articles should be either in the description or in the comment section.
Yeah, I'm trying to pivot to the comment section.
Yeah, but for the sake of time, let's hop into the next one. I think it's that one right there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, all right. And the 5 ways narcissists project and attack you. Start from the top.
Yeah.
Most narcissists generally lack self-awareness. Indeed, a sense of self-esteem and self-worth depends on how others perceive them, and they tend to deny flaws in themselves and blame others for their own shortcomings, mistakes, and misfortunes. This is called projection, and people with narcissistic tendencies are projection-heavy individuals. Here is what 5 different but related ways people with strong narcissistic, sociopathic, and psychopathic tendencies deny, project, blame, confuse, and hurt others. Calling you things that you are not. Classic example, you cheated on me when you're not, but you can't bet they cheated on you. Or you're selfish because you don't want to do what I'm asking you to do. You're only thinking about yourself.
And so you see how oftentimes there's a form of gaslighting and projection that occurs. And if you don't agree with it, they look at you like you're not seeing my reality. You're not seeing my delusion.
Yeah. Meanwhile, they are the ones constantly make up excuses, break promises, are unreliable, think only about themselves or compete with you. Not only that, they forget all the things you have already done for them. In their eyes, they are entitled to your resources, time, money, energy, and you are aggressing against them that you won't, can't, or don't give them what they want.
Yep.
They will not reciprocate unless there is some reason for them to. They'll use various manipulation and abuse tactics like name calling, mocking, bullying, triangulation, minimizing, character defamation, rating feelings, trolling, obscuring the issue, deflecting, gaslighting, guilt tripping, provoking, unreasonable criticism, nitpicking, or plain verbal abuse, all to make you feel bad and give in to their demands.
And that's what it boils down to, giving in to a certain demand.
If it's not you, there's always someone else. Look how horrible this other person is, and how do you know what that person did? Meaning, forget about me and my shortcomings. Let's find someone else with flaws and talk about them. That way, in their mind, we don't have to think about my shortcomings, or we'll come to a conclusion that I'm great by default because everyone else is so horrible.
Always an enemy. There always needs to be an enemy.
Grandiosity, mimicking, exaggeration. The narcissists think they are super, ultra, turbo, mega special. They deserve exceptional treatment, and that or that they are justified in hurting others.
Constantly.
They have grandiose goals and exaggerate their achievements to appear more impressive and more superior. Narcissists often feel a need to compete with others since they are factually not that special and terribly insecure on top of it. They will pretend, lie, hurt, or exploit others, or do whatever else that they deem necessary for personal gain.
Mm-hmm.
As a result, they may take upon other people's character traits and achievements. This originates from a place of envy and self-aggrandizement.
Aggrandizement, yeah.
Often to the degree of mimicking, plagiarizing, stealing, and being a fraud, all by defaming and belittling others. This is meant to destroy the credibility of their victims while appearing to be more competent themselves. This provides a handy distraction from what's really going on.
Hey, if you could, because I want to hone in on that point right there. It's very interesting because even because at this point, we're kind of looking into the IUIC. We're looking into the congregation that me and Benea were. I was excommunicated from. I think both of us were, but this is kind of like a case study, So we're putting examples to faces, putting names to faces. That point exactly kind of reminds me of what the leader of the previous church would do, as far as he took on the persona of the elder of one of our old churches that we used to go to, and you could, because when you actually look at what the elder talked about and represented, there were certain things that the elder spoke out against that this leader was definitely for. So there they weren't in sync, and you could tell that they weren't in sync. But he admired the man so much that he wanted to become him, and so he has a picture of this man on his wall, and he keeps bringing the man up in every sermon, just like the man only talked to him, even though the elder would actually go out and speak with multiple brothers and be up till late in the night having these conversations with these brothers. But of course, the narrative has to be that I was a special one and I was ordained. Kind of like how in Animal Farm, Napoleon, for anybody that's read Animal Farm, Napoleon had the skull of the old boar that had died and just held it out in front of the farm in order to make it seem like he was the successor of the old boar. And so you see this pattern, and it's interesting because somebody actually pointed out that when that brother was leading the media department, he would pretend and act as if he was elder while walking around the media department. So this is just to illustrate that point of these, people that go through these various mental things, like the narcissism. They're so out of tune with themselves to the point where they will try to adopt anything that resembles a grandiosity because they admire this person. I have to take on their traits. I have to be like them. And if I'm missing the mark, then it's the biggest shame in the world.
Yeah. So go to number 3 here.
Yeah.
Preemptive strike.
Yeah.
Whenever a narcissistic person feels threatened, they will call you the things that themselves are as, or are afraid that others see them as. And then they will try to stalk you, slander you, or discredit you.
Yep.
They will try to sabotage and destroy you. They will start a smear campaign and attempt character assassination.
That's a big one.
In their mind, frighteningly, you'll become their mortal enemy. Wow.
Even though they're not taking up brain in your mind.
Right. Yeah, they also have no problem doing it all preemptively and calling it defense.
Yep.
So if you properly call them out, set healthier boundaries that are in the relationship, they may be afraid that you can see their flaws, although you'll tell others what kind of person they are. Whether you do that or not is not important to them, because in their mind, the mere possibility of it is a good enough excuse to label you as an enemy.
Yep.
And because a narcissistic type of person has little to no empathy, they may imagine that you would behave as they would in these situations.
Yep.
And if they would lie, or more likely they are already lying, they will accuse you of lying. And so they will do all these things just because they think you are somehow trying to or might hurt them. They'll also accuse you of the very thing they themselves are doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Lying, manipulating, trying to accrue.
Killing the character. You know, to kill your character to the point where they won't even be tempted to ask your side of the story.
No, exactly.
So they had to destroy it.
Yeah, right, but then people will come and make slight little remarks.
Yeah.
You know, and when you ask them, hey, let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to talk. No. All of a sudden, their tongue flew from their mouth, mm-hmm. and went off to fly north.
Yeah. Playing the victim. A common narcissistic strategy is to play the victim. You hurt me, poor me. Instead of working through the issue with you or internally, they had no problem dragging others into it by lying or painting you as a perpetrator or in the sense as the victim. Mm-hmm. I guess to your point where, you know, you had a private meeting with him when there's a problem and he thought everything was all good, but apparently it wasn't. It was the hidden resentment. So what they do the next meeting, they bring all these other people in there.
Yeah, because it was multiple brothers that were in the second meeting.
And then he played the victim as you the one, the aggressor somehow.
Yep. Uh-huh. and it's funny because throughout the whole duration of the meeting, nobody knew why they were there. They of course, it was a guise because he always had to wait for a guise. Mm. But nobody knew why they were there. And then at the end of it, the result that he wanted didn't come. And yet they started treating me better. Even though literally the result that he wanted, nothing changed. Nothing changed. Nothing at all changed. I was still doing the show. I was still not in the media department. I was still keeping my distance from all the drama or attempting to. Nothing changed.
You know, he went back to the car like,
right. Nothing changed. And yet, people started acting differently just because of that meeting.
Okay, now he painted the picture that he's the victim.
Yeah.
You know, you doing nothing but living life, minding your business.
Right.
Go down. Okay. Oftentimes, this involves the aforementioned preemptive strike or provoking to get a reaction. For example, destroying your property, slandering you, turning people against you,
right,
or physically attacking you. They're too weak for that. And then when you respond appropriately to the act of a passive aggression, now they can say that you're the aggressor because you are hurting them, and that you're unreasonable because of your wild, unacceptable behavior.
Exactly.
It's callous and calculated.
They try to provoke you.
Right. It's callous and calculated, and again, it involves accusing you of the things that they themselves are doing or have done. So it's not uncommon that the audience of this dramatic spectacle doesn't see the whole picture or doesn't care enough to figure out the full story. Like they kill the character to the point they don't even ask.
Right.
It's not uncommon that many will take the side of the narcissist, of course. The narcissist is desperate that the spectacle to be believed for the sake of their emotional management, so much that they will say or do almost anything.
And it starts to get to a point where the people that are following this narcissist and what the narrative that they put out, they will tell you that what you're saying isn't true. Mm-hmm. Because they have a perception of you that's been imprinted on them by constant conversations with this narcissist, this narcissistic leader.
Yeah, and it's here for a narcissist is rarely about the truth. It's almost always about their audience's perception.
Exactly.
This way, they receive false validation that they are right and good, and that you are wrong and evil. Here, their sense of self-esteem is restored, and their feelings of shame and inadequacy are managed. So all is well and good, except for those who got hurt, but who cares about them, right?
And it's one of those things where people telling them they're right allows them to somewhat believe that they're right. The truth is going to be the truth. It doesn't matter if, and I tell people all the time, it doesn't matter if I believe it or if you believe it. The truth is an unmovable force that you're not going to sway.
I know this is like slightly off topic, but it's a show called The Boys on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
And I watched it, man. The show is but so many layers to it that reflects back to what we're going through here.
Yeah.
So this is a show about the superheroes, but they're really bad guys.
Yeah.
You know, about the perception, right? But the black hero, he joined this particular church. I guess it represents the Church of Scientology.
Yeah.
What it represents. But you know, he was a true believer in it. He wanted to help people. He brought other people. But when they asked him to cut off his mom, he's like, "Yo, I'm not gonna cut off my mom." You know what I mean?
Right? Because why?
Why? But when he did that, they just started spewing out everything, put a whole smear campaign against him to the point everybody blamed him, and nobody looked at the church leaders.
Exactly.
And it's exactly the same thing here.
Right. And the worst thing that you could do is try to clean your name.
Yeah.
Because at that point, you just say, "Hey, I'm jacked up."
Yeah. By that point, you know. The no, you defense. If you call them out when they crap or they expect you can see through their smoke and mirrors, they will say that you are others who are all these things, or that all of it is false and nonsense.
I mean, for Psych Central, you would imagine it'll have better writing. But
yeah, I know, right? You see, this kind of like
yeah. But this is getting the point across.
Yeah,
people. Yeah.
Oh, they might even say that they are honest, caring, and authentic, and that you don't understand these things. You are projecting, you are pretending, you are triggered, you are gaslighting, you are narcissistic, and whatever buzzword they have learned.
And guess what? What can you do?
Yeah.
Literally, what are you going to do?
Because people with narcissistic tendencies can be interested in human psychology too. A lot of them actually working in helping, teaching, in medical fields, or pretend to be experts and intellectuals on social media. Some of them are really smart, eloquent, and popular, which make their statements more believable to an unaware audience.
Right.
They can all learn from these fancy terms and phrases, yet they often don't understand or even care about how to apply them correctly. Here is another tool for manipulation. For them, learning means finding ways to justify all the disturbing thoughts and behaviors, or use the knowledge as a tool against others for personal gain.
Right.
They will do anything but accept reality and become a decent person, yet they can play one quite well. That will throw me off here.
Mm-hmm.
Have you encountered any of these things when dealing with narcissistic people? Do you notice anything that wasn't included in this list? Yeah, that's the article here.
Yeah.
All right.
So it just goes to show that, and we're gonna get into even more. Actually, let's go into that right there. Yeah. We're gonna get into even more tactics that are utilized by narcissistic people in order to kind of get the result that they're looking for. This one, projection, this is a good example.
All right, projection here. The act of attributing the one's own feelings or traits to another person, or and imagining or believing that the other person had those same feelings or traits. Wearing someone else's stuff. Because people with personality disorders have an unstable view of themselves. Sometimes they can lose track of where their own identity ends and when someone else's begins.
Right.
In psychological terms, it's known as identity disturbance, as you were saying. They think they're the past leader.
Exactly.
As these identity disturbances blur the lines between the self and others, sometimes people with personality disorders will attribute their own personal and psychological characteristics to others. This practice is known as projection.
And here's the thing about it. Oftentimes they're not doing it on purpose. It's not really even something that
they don't know they messed up in their head.
Right.
In some forms, the relative harmless is a personality disorder person believing their own likes, dislikes, feelings, opinions, or beliefs that actually belong to another person.
Right.
It can, however, become malignant when it involves arbitration. Yeah. Attribution. Excuse me. Excuse me, y'all. We tired.
Yeah, it's late.
Personality disorder individual own actions, words, blame, fault, hatred, liability, or flawed character unto one another. It's especially the case when projection then becomes justification for some form of punishment or abuse. Projection can either be conscious, or a perpetrator knows they're deliberately deflecting blame or liability onto another person, or subconscious, where the perpetrator is unaware they are distorting or dissociating the facts. Sometimes it's simply the result of good old-fashioned blaming, where blame or responsibility for a problem is conveniently attributed to another person. Projection can also occur as a result of dissociation and a departure from reality-based thinking. It's extremely difficult to prove if a personality disorder person believes their own statements of projection. We also mean it's generally an exercise in futility, trying to argue the case for their own reality. Nobody likes to be told a falsified version of what they think, feel, or believe, even when benign issues. And whenever someone is falsely accused, slandered, or held in disrepute, great harm can be done to a person's relationships, self-confidence, and sense of well-being. Acts of projection commonly result in defensiveness, indignation, annoyance, argument, or even retribution and retaliation on the part of subject of victims.
Right.
What it looks like. A mother assumes her children only likes the same food she likes. Abusive father hits his children and blames the teenage son for the bruises. A wife empties a joint checking account and accuses her husband of wasting resources. A mother who is embarrassed about her weight problem repeatedly calls her eldest daughter fat. An employee who lacks financial discipline accuses employees of squandering resources. Coping with projection is very similar to coping with episodes of false accusations, except sometimes the false statements may initially appear nice or neutral. Even these can be irritating and annoying, and when they are veer into negative territory or make inflated or untrue claims, they can also in the long term be damaging to the credibility of self-esteem.
Right.
What not to do, don't accept responsibility, blame, or criticism which you know is wildly undeserved. Don't give a personality disorder person power over your self-image. Don't attempt to argue the point. Say the truth quietly and clearly once.
Because it is not going to get you anywhere.
Nope.
If everybody wants to believe that your head is on backwards, guess what? Everybody, my head is on backwards.
Yeah.
You keep it moving because you know it ain't.
Yep. I say I don't talk to dead people, man.
Yeah.
The dead be with the dead.
Exactly.
Know yourself. Emotional clarity and understanding your own strengths and weaknesses is your best self-defense against the erotic power of projection. On your own experience and spend time with people who give you an honest reflection of who you are.
Right. Honest. Not a good reflection, not
Right.
a bad reflection, an honest one. People who are able to tell you your negative qualities as well as your good ones. And the next one we're going to get into is that one right there. Yes. Let's get into gaslighting.
Right. Gaslighting is a form of manipulation that often occurs in abusive relationships. It's a covert type of emotional abuse where the bully or abuser misleads the target, creating a false narrative and making them question their judgments and reality.
Right.
Ultimately, the victim of gaslighting starts to feel unsure about their perceptions of the world and even wonder they are losing their sanity. Gaslighting primarily occurs in romantic relationships, but it's not uncommon for it to occur in controlling friendships or among family members as well. People who gaslight others may have mental health disorders, such as narcissistic personality disorder or borderline personality disorder. They use this type of emotional abuse to assert power over others in order to manipulate friends, family members, or even coworkers.
And I remember even a situation where there was the leader of the previous church. He went as far as to cause a sister to believe that she was insane.
Mm.
He went as far as to cause a sister to believe that she was crazy. And we all started, like other people started to believe that she was insane.
He sold it.
He sold it very well. I mean, he, as much research as he could, did research, referred to psychology. He did all these things and was trying to say that she was crazy. As soon as she was out the environment, her countenance changed. Everything was a lot better. And whatever mania was going on was gone. It was completely gone.
Mm.
And you realize, oh, it wasn't her, it was the environment. Because they were putting her under so much stress. Because they were doing all, and oftentimes, you know, these weak men, they attack women and children.
Mm-hmm.
So that's oftentimes their way to get to the man.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I've been noticing with that individual. He likes to attack the woman first because he can't attack the man. He's not man enough. So
You're weak.
right. So that it becomes one of those things where that kind of gaslighting is really serious. It's really dangerous because when you have somebody questioning their sanity, guess what? Their sanity might actually start to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like speaking into existence, huh?
Right. But you watch out with these leaders.
How it works. Gaslighting is a technique that undermines a person's perception of reality. When someone is gaslighting you, you may second guess yourself, your memories, your recent events, and your perceptions. After communicating with the person gaslighting you, you may be left feeling dazed and wondering if there's something wrong with you. You may be encouraged to think you are actually to blame for something or that you're just being too sensitive. Gaslighting can confuse you or cause you to question your judgment, memory, self-worth, and overall mental health. It may help to know more about the tactics the person who is gaslighting you might use.
And it's insane to see somebody's attempt at doing it to you, because even with the black narrative, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
I remember the leader. He was talking to me about the black narrative, and he was trying to spin it as this was all about you. Black narrative was all about you because he had to project himself, and if the black narrative was about him, it would have been named after him. So your name's Black Ice.
Mm-hmm.
It's the black narrative. he was trying to tell me, he was like, you don't realize that the black narrative is about black ice? Black ice, black narrative. And I told him, I was like, no, it's about black people and our narrative.
And also let you know, he had no idea how we put the broadcast together.
Right.
Or we shared research.
And he sat back and covered his face in absolute just like stupefaction, as if I was the dumbest person in the room, because I did not believe his made-up narrative. Gaslighting.
Right. This is his broadcast, the false narrative.
Yeah, you know, seriously, I did not believe the made-up narrative, and so he made it seem like I was crazy. But guess what? I knew I wasn't.
He tried to sell it.
He tried to sell, man. When I tell you, pushy salesman. But I wasn't buying.
But I was just let you know they had no idea what we're trying to do and the message we're trying to put out.
Right.
And why we're doing it. But you know, like you said here, you know, they assume we are like them.
Yeah.
You know, we're not doing it for selfish reasons. We have to try to make a difference.
Exactly.
Within our community. Lying to you. People who engage in gaslighting are often habitual and pathological liars and frequently exhibit narcissistic tendencies. It's typical for them to blatantly lie and never back down or change their stories. Even when you call them out or provide proof of the deception, they may say something like, "You making things up that never happened," or "You're crazy."
It's like I mean, multiple ways he lied, but even the situation where he accused the brother of taking lights.
Yeah.
He accused his brother of taking lights, and I told him, "Do you have any proof?"
But you know, that's another tactic too. They're way too you're not around to challenge it, so you can just express that narrative because it's always there.
Right.
You know, like I wasn't gonna back down for that.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Especially with like somebody who's paranoia. You know, you got like 50, 60 cameras around the building.
Right.
Like they would show the footage. If that's the case.
Right. And he had no evidence that this brother took anything, and he said it himself. But he was spreading that narrative, and isn't that a lie?
But anything they kill their character so to promote his agenda.
Yeah, he said himself. He said, "I don't need evidence."
Now they don't need evidence.
Yeah.
But yeah, cameras and microphones everywhere.
Yeah.
Amazing. It's discrediting you. There we go. People gaslight, spread rumors and gossip about you to others. They may pretend to be worried about you, with subtly telling others that you may seem emotional, unstable, or crazy.
Yeah, that's the tactic he used with me.
Yeah.
Pretend like he was concerned when he ain't give a damn.
Unfortunately, this tactic can be extremely effective, and many people side with an abuser or bully without knowing the full story. Yeah. Additionally, someone who engages in gaslighting may lie to you and tell you that other people also think this about you. These people may not never said a bad thing about you, but a person who gaslighting you will make every attempt to get you to believe they do.
Multiple times.
Yeah. Distracting you. When you ask a person who gaslights a question or call them out for something they did or said, they may change the subject by asking the question instead of responding to the issue at hand.
Right.
This also throws off your train of thought, but causes you to question the need or pressing matter when they don't feel the need to respond.
And it goes into that whole deflecting thing, kind of like. If you were to ride 285,
I was say I got that 285 mentality. Yeah. You ride around in a circle.
It's that 285 mentality where you're just riding around in circles and you never get to the point, because the point is not to come to an understanding.
Like, don't ask them yes or no questions, because they're gonna try to dance around there as much as possible.
Right, because they know that a yes or no question is going to get you closer to the truth and to revealing what the issue is.
Yeah, it's a lot of leaders like that. You may have a pastor, you may have a pastor 285 or a priest 285 out there.
Yeah,
it's just like the talk in circles, so you never get the real answer.
Deacon 285, Bishop 285. You're right. You know, you got all kinds of like just put position 285.
Yep, there you go. And for y'all don't know, 285 is a circle around Atlanta.
Yeah, it's called a perimeter, because you can ride on 285 all day and night, and you can ride on it for a month, and you'll be on 285.
Oh. Minimizing your thoughts and feelings. Trivializing your emotions allows the person who's gaslighting you to gain power over you. They may make statements like, "Calm down, you're overreacting. Why are you so sensitive?" All these statements minimize how you're feeling or what you're thinking and communicate that you're wrong.
Right.
Shifting blame. Blame shifting is another common gaslighting tactic. Every discussion you have is somehow twisted to where you are to blame for something that occurred. Even when you try to discuss how the abuser's behavior make you feel, they're able to twist the conversation so that you end up questioning if you are the cause of their bad behavior. Mm-hmm. For example, they may claim that only if you behave differently, they'll not treat you the way they do.
Which is a lie.
All right. Deny wrongdoing. People engaged in bullying and emotional abuse are notorious for denying that they did anything wrong. They did this to avoid taking responsibility for their poor choices. This denial can lead the victim of gaslighting feeling unseen, unheard, and as though the impact on them is of no importance. This tactic can also make it very hard for the victim to move on and heal from bullying or abusiveness. Using compassionate words as weapons. Sometimes when called out or questioned, a person who gaslight will use kind, loving words to try to smooth things over the situation. Mm-hmm. They might say something like, "You know how much I love you. I will never hurt you on purpose." These words may what you want to hear, but they are inauthentic. Especially if the same behavior is repeated. That said, they may be just enough to convince you to let them off the hook, which allows the person to escape responsibility and consequences for their hurtful behavior.
And of course, that's a form of abuse. And it's interesting because that tactic was used on me. Mm. Because one day, out of the blue, the leader comes to me. He was like, after making a whole entire sermon, trying to make it seem like I was being led by the nose. Mm. He was saying how after that sermon he came to me. He was like, brother, we really want you here, and this and a third, and it's like we don't need you here, but we want you here, something along those lines.
After throwing you on the bus.
Right, after throwing me on the bus and making multiple sermons about me. So I was like, oh, okay. And so later on, come to find out, he didn't want me there.
Yeah. Rewriting history. That's another one.
Mm-hmm.
A person gaslights tends to retell stories in ways that are in their favor.
Of course.
For instance, if your partner shoved you against the wall and you're discussing it later, they may twist the story and say you stumbled and they tried to say to you, "We would cause you to fall into the wall."
Yep.
You may begin to doubt your memory of what happened, encouraging confusion or second guessing on your part exactly the intention.
And when I tell you multiple stories, and this is a fairly long article, but you get the gist, and it'll be in the description for you guys to read through. And, if you're going through a situation like this, to kind of these are also good resources if you're going through these various things. The next thing that we're going to get into is called a flying monkey. Mm. Now, of course, people act a monkey. But let's figure out what a flying monkey has to do when it comes to narcissism.
Flying monkeys is a term used in popular psychology, mainly in the context of narcissistic abuse, to describe people who act on behalf of narcissistic towards a third party, usually for abusive purpose, or a smear campaign. The phrase has also been used to refer to people who act on behalf of a psychopath for a similar purpose. The term is not formally used in medical practice or teaching. The term is from the winged monkeys used by the Wicked Witch of the West in the book The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. They carry out the evil deeds on her behalf. It's closely related or synonymously concept. Tactics, I guess, right?
Yeah.
The flying monkey does the narcissist's bidding to inflict additional torment on the target. It may consist of spying, spreading gossip, threatening, painting the narcissist as a victim, and the target as a perpetrator. Despite this, narcissists do not hesitate to make flying monkeys his or her scapegoats if it's needed.
Oh, yes.
The flying monkeys may make it seem like the narcissist is not really involved, and they likely had no idea they're being used. Multiple flying monkeys act as a mobbing force against the victim.
This is a very interesting point. Because I remember, and brother, if you're watching, please make sure that you're taking your notes and get your timestamps ready to send to the priest. Mm-hmm. But the priest has used various brothers in order to try to, like for instance, when we made a class about, when we made the Bible study, he actually used these brothers to get timestamps and references and all these different things. And then later on, when he's on the phone talking with other brothers about it, he's saying, "Oh, let's see if they're blowing smoke." So he's using these brothers to try to gather information, and then throwing them under the bus like this is of their own volition.
Yeah.
Everything is of their own volition. Flying monkeys. Mm-hmm. And I've been noticing that throughout the whole duration of, and you'll notice as well, throughout the duration of these various attacks, they use the same flying monkeys in the same exact way. Because you go through your experience, then you talk to somebody else, you're like, oh, this sister said that? Oh, wow. And then this sister said that. And then they send this sister, and then she said that. That's similar to this message. Wow. And then she tried to rope you in. She played a friend. Ah, okay. So that's how he uses each one of his flying monkeys.
Yeah, they make it act like they're coming to check on you as a friend, but really they're here to spread more mess.
Exactly. And it's the same exact
Yeah, so they're using the men and the women.
Yeah, in the same exact ways.
Yeah.
You know, and you'll have, because they know how to use their personality traits in order to come at you. Now, let's go a little more into it by looking into abuse by proxy. Yeah, right there. Which is the technical term for a flying monkey.
When an abuser can directly inflict abuse upon his victim, he may find accomplices to do his dirty work for him. If all else fails, the abuser recruits friends, colleagues, mates, family members, the authorities, institutions, neighbors, the media, teachers, in short, third parties to do his bidding. He uses them to control, coerce, threaten, stalk, offer, retreat, tempt, convince, harass, communicate, and otherwise manipulate his target. He controls these unaware instruments exactly as he plans to control his ultimate prey. He employs the same mechanisms and devices, and he dumps his props unceremoniously when the job is done.
And I've seen this brother do this multiple times by trying to spread certain narratives, and now people come to me and say certain things. I'm like, where'd you get that from?
They say come to you directly.
Yeah, knowing dang where they get that from.
Yep. One form of control by proxy is to engineer situations in which abuse is inflicted upon another person. Such carefully crafted scenarios of embarrassment and humiliation provoke social sanctions, combinations, I don't know how to pronounce that, even physical punishment. Opprobrium, even a physical punishment against a victim. Society or a social group become the instruments of the abuser. Abusers often use other people to do their dirty work for them. These, sometimes unwitting, accomplices belong to three groups. So the abuser social milieu. Some offenders, mainly patriarchal and misogynist societies, co-opt other family members, friends, and colleagues into aiding and abetting their abusive conduct. In extreme cases, the victim is held hostage, isolated with little or no access to funds or transportation. Often the couple's children are used in the bargaining chips or leverage. Ambient abuse by the abuser's clan, kin, kith, and village or neighborhood is rampant.
Yeah, I mean, of course, completely disregard the patriarchal and misogynistic societies thing.
Right.
Yeah, but the victim social milieu.
Yep.
And honestly, we could just touch on the various, just the names of those three different types, because I feel like, you guys get a chance to read through it.
Okay, can you just read that first paragraph?
Just the
name.
name.
Name, and then the third one, the system.
Yeah.
I can read that one though.
Yeah.
The abuser prefers the system, therapists, marriage counselors, mediators, court-appointed guardians, police officers, and judges. He uses them to pathologize the victim and to separate her from her sources of emotional sustenance, normally from her children. Wow, yeah, like all these articles are going to be in the pinned in the comments.
Yeah, so you guys could go a little further into that. And the next thing we're going to look into is proxy recruitment, to kind of see how people kind of reel these various people into becoming their flying monkeys.
Proxy recruitment, a way of controlling and abusing another person by manipulating other people into unwillingly doing their dirty work. Sometimes attempts to control someone or abuse them are fairly obvious. The proxy recruitment, however, manipulation of others, is used to achieve the same aim in a highly secretive way. Friends, colleagues, or family members may be drawn into a perpetrator's game plan to false accusations of abuse, smear campaigns, or distortion campaigns.
Yeah.
And these people are then encouraged to take up the perpetrator's cause against the victim, which go right back into the flying monkeys.
Yep.
How it works. It can be extremely powerful. Proxy recruitment can be an extremely powerful way of establishing control over another person. It forces the victim into a defensive posture, justifying themselves or denying false claims to friends, family, neighbors, acquaintances, and authority figures.
And that's why you got to be somebody that does not care about other people's opinions, because you will not try to justify yourself, because you will save your breath.
It often attempts to reverse roles in the eyes of others, casting the abuser as a victim and portraying the victim as a real abuser. It also deflects attention away from the abuser and provides cover or justification for further abuse to occur. Proxy recruitment is much easier if the abuser assumes a position of authority. Yale University psychologist Stanley Milgram demonstrated that people will often perform an irrational act if instructed to do so by an authority figure, even if the act is unkind or cruel to another person. Proxy recruitment isn't just a tactic used by people with personality disorders. It's a universal reaction to recruit allies when engaged in a conflict situation. However, when it involves misrepresenting the truth or causing deliberate harm, it is a form of toxic and abusive behavior. Go here, or are you going to let them read it?
We can go into the next one.
All right.
And this next link, I just want to, if we could take that and kind of show this link, just so I could kind of explain this link. If you could kind of show it. So basically, this is a link that I definitely want in the description, and it basically goes down the various traits. I mean, it's over 100, but the various traits of people with these personality disorders. So you guys could have this to reference when you're going through a situation similar to the one we went through.
All right.
Now let's get into, because oftentimes there are other traits and especially the delusions that come with these various disorders. So let's look into, what do you think we should start? Do you think we should kind of jump ahead? Or?
Yeah, you can jump ahead.
Yeah, we could look into psychosis.
All right, with psychosis. Psychosis is an experience in which a person loses touch with reality. People experiencing psychosis may have sensations that are not really there, such as hearing voices others cannot hear. They may also have firmly held beliefs in something that is demonstrably false, even after being confronted with evidence of its falsehood. About 3% of Americans will experience psychosis at some point in their lifetime.
All right, now let's scroll down a bit, a little more. Symptoms, early warning signs. Let me see. Yeah, positive symptoms. Yeah, let's go into right there, right here.
Okay. Positive symptoms involve the existence or appearance of experiences and behavior that should not be there. The most common ones are hallucinations, a sensory experience of hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, or feeling something that is not real. Visual or auditory hallucinations are most common. Delusions, strong persistent beliefs that are out of touch with reality and remain unchanged by evidence that disputes them. This can include things like believing people on TV are sending them secret messages, thinking they are someone of great importance or godlike, paranoia that they think they are being persecuted or spied on, and other false and intrusive beliefs.
And we're going to go ahead and start to look into these individual beliefs here. I think some of these are actually opened up with highlights already. So let me see.
So we already did this. I can close this one out.
Yeah.
Close this one out.
You just close that one out.
Okay.
What is that one? Yeah, close that one out.
Okay.
Close that one out. And yeah, let's go. Let's start from the top, if we could. Yeah.
All right, delusions and delusional disorder. All right. Delusional disorder, previously called paranoid disorder, is a type of serious mental illness called a psychotic disorder. People who have it can tell what's real from what is imagined. Delusions are the main symptom of delusional disorder. They are unshakable beliefs in something that isn't true or based in reality. But that doesn't mean they're completely unrealistic. Delusional disorder involves delusions that are bizarre, having to do with situations that can happen in real life, like being followed, poisoned, deceived, conspired against, or loved from a distance. These delusions are often mistaken perceptions or experiences. But in reality, the situations are either not true at all or highly exaggerated.
And it's you scroll down to the highlighted part, but and it's really kind of disturbing, because I've seen multiple times how these various delusions are spread throughout a congregation when you have groupthink, mind you, when you have the figurehead, when you have the influencer, when they come up with a certain idea, it starts to be disseminated throughout their realm of influence. For instance, the leader, he believed that a good bit of clouds were fake, were somehow, constructed by, a HARP or what have you. Now, of course, like, these different technologies exist.
Like, HARP exists, but
I don't believe that
every cloud in the sky is fake either.
Right, and then it became this very deep conspiracy theory that they're trying to produce these various clouds in order to stop black people from getting their melanin, then their vitamin D, so that we can die. So that's why they're producing these clouds. Now you hear it and you're like, oh, that's kind of ridiculous. What do you have to back that up? All of a sudden, various people within group chats started sending photos of random clouds. Hey, isn't this a weird cloud? Isn't this weird? I mean, that's a weird looking cloud. That's a creepy cloud, isn't it? And so this delusion was spread throughout all these people within the church. Now, does delusion have anything to do with scriptures? No. Does it have anything to do with salvation? I don't think so. Does it have anything, is it enlightening anybody? No, not really. But this very strongly held belief is now part of a reoccurring mindset and belief that if you are a part of us, you believe that the clouds are creepy. This goes to show the power of, like, it's one thing, these are powerful things within themselves, but when it's being emulated by a leader, it's dangerous.
Yeah, he's selling it off and people are buying it.
Yeah. Let's go into these.
Let's go up here. Here we go. The types of delusion and delusional disorders. Erotomaniac. Erotomanic. Excuse me. The person believes someone the person believes someone is in love with them and might try to contact that person. Often someone important or famous. This can lead to stalking behavior. Grandiose. This person have an overinflated sense of worth, power, knowledge, or identity. They could believe that they have a great talent or made an important discovery. Jealous. A person with this type believes their spouse or sexual partner is unfaithful. Persecutory. Someone who has this believes they or someone close to them are being mistreated, or that someone is spying on them or planning to harm them. They may make repeated complaints to legal authorities. Somatic. They believe that they have a physical defect or medical problem. Mixed. These people have two or more of the types delusions listed above.
And now let's go into delusions of persecution. I think that one is in the tab right beside. Yep, right there.
Okay. Yes, now. All right. Delusion of persecution. You probably believe something one time or another that turned out to be untrue. But if you have a real mental illness called delusional disorder, no amount of facts or reasons can shake your thinking. People with delusions cannot tell which beliefs are real and which are imaginary. The delusions come in several types. The most common is delusion of persecution. Is when you're convinced that someone is mistreating, conspiring against, or planning to harm you or your loved one. Another type of grandiose delusions where you have an unrealistically inflated sense of yourself or your achievements.
Because you think you're worthy of being persecuted, that you're that important. Now, I think I might have something highlighted. If not, we can just go to the next one.
Okay.
Yeah. And the next one is, let me see. If you scroll down a little. Yeah. I think it should be. Yeah, right there.
Okay.
Yeah, we just read the highlighted part.
All right. A person believing their own greatness is the hallmark of delusion and grandeur. For the belief to be a delusion, it must be unreasonable and incorrect. For instance, a person who claims to be the president of the United States, when they are clearly are not, is an example of delusion and grandeur. There are other symptoms along with inflated false beliefs to one's own importance. This includes difficulty getting along with others because of the delusion, a persistent belief in the delusion despite contrary evidence, dismissal of or anger at people who refuse to accept the delusional belief, persistent attempts to get others to accept the belief, behaving as if the belief is true, experiencing other delusions. Because delusions and grandeur are usually related to mental health condition. Most people with this symptom also experience with other mental health symptoms.
Let's scroll down and see if there's. Yeah, I think that's the basic idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're seeing these various patterns, and it kind of just builds off of the narcissism, and this is the last one, I believe.
This one and going off of this one, right?
Oh yeah, perfect.
Yep.
What is erotomania? Now, yeah, if we could just read off that little part, and then I have an anecdote.
All right. A person erotomania has delusional belief that another person is in love with him or her despite clear evidence against them. The object of the person's delusion is often a celebrity or person of higher social status, an individual that may believe that this person is communicating with them or affirming their love using secret messages. In this article, you learn about the religious order and associated conditions.
And that's basically the gist of it, but it's interesting because I remember, and you see this oftentimes in various church settings, where you got the pastor or the priest or what have you, and they are convinced that because they have this authority, that they are the most desirable thing walking around in there. And it starts to get to a point where they start to plot on various sisters that come in. They start to talk to their right-hand men about, like, oh, you can have this sister, I have that one, with no conversation with the sisters at all. Their wives understand that they have this mindset, so the wives are jealous. The wives start spreading various slurs and stuff about the sisters, saying that the sister wants their man, even though there's no evidence of it, and the man's going out of his way to be in their face. And you start to get into a situation where you're starting to run sisters off of the word. You're starting to run people off because of this delusion that you have, and that delusion has been disseminated to your wives now.
It's just spreading.
Yeah. So now they believe that miscellaneous people just desire their husband.
And every woman wants them.
Every single woman.
Amazing.
Now, let's go into the last character trait that we'll go into, because oftentimes, of course you have the leader, but sometimes there's a right-hand man to the leader that is basically a elevated form of a yes man. And so we're going to look into a certain personality trait that sometimes these various right-hand men have and utilize in order to keep their accreditation with that specific leader.
Yeah, all about Machiavellianism. Machiavellianism. Personality often manipulate others to get what they want. You ever meet someone manipulative? What about someone who likes to plot the scheme, and maybe who thinks others are only there to serve their investment? Whether you know someone directly who fits a bill, chances are these personality traits are altogether unfamiliar. I think it was part of we went down here. Okay, let me go down here. A Machiavellian personality is manipulative and strategic. When they have a goal, they think through how to achieve it very skillfully without any consideration for the feelings of others involved. They may also use manipulative behaviors to get what they want, as well as deception or exploitation. They often come off as unemotional. Machiavellianism tends to be more common in men, but can also affect anyone and at any age. When interacting with them, they may find their behavior charming and engaging, yet you never really feel close to them. They lack empathy. Unlike a narcissist, they will seek to gain their goals without coming the center of attention. They tend to enjoy being a person pulling the strings rather than a puppet on the stage.
And right.
Machiavellianism is part of psychology called the dark triad of personality. The dark triad, coined in 2002, consists of 3 personality disorders: Machiavellianism, narcissism, and psychopathy.
And here's one example that I could give, because there was, oftentimes when you look in the Christian church, you don't have access to the pastor. And that was something that used to be critically criticized within the church. But then all of a sudden, the right-hand man to the leader suggested to the leader that, that familiarity breeds contempt. And so he suggested to the leader to stop being around the congregation as much and to lock himself in his office. And guess what the leader did? He got up and started locking himself in the office because familiarity breeds contempt. Yet, isn't that the exact same thing that we used to criticize the Christian church for?
Yep. He go to his church. He had no access to the pastor.
But everything is a power play. That's why, even for instance, there was a day where this brother wasn't able to. You weren't able to make it to a meeting, and so they were looking at it not as, because there's no empathy, mind you, not as you have to wake up for work the next day. They looked at it as, oh, you see, he's trying to pull a power play on us. It's not about power, it's about sleep.
Because some people have to work an early shift.
But when you see that everything is about power and everything is Machiavellian, you got to be careful. You got to be mindful. And the sad thing about it is a lot of people that are Machiavellian don't think that people see them.
Smile in your face and number dark intentions.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. We'll leave the link there, right?
Yeah.
Kind of covered it. You want to wrap this up, this part one?
Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up this part one. I hope you guys got a good bit from it so far. And there should be 4 parts in total.
Yeah.
So definitely,
because there's so much to break down, and
there's a lot.
And I know a lot of people probably can't relate to it and be in these situations, and it could be a Christian church, it could be the Israelite church, or in other situations.
Hey, it could be a political party.
Yeah, and you just point out that, but this particular broadcast, this particular video, you'll try the red flags to look out for from these leaders. That if you see it, run away, turn another direction, get out of there.
Yep.
But we got to go deeper in the next part. We actually break down some of these scriptures. And biblically about some of these things. But we just want to lay out the foundation here, and laying out the mental health part and the symptoms to look out for.
Right.
But like, share, subscribe, and look out for part 2.
All right. Shalom, family.
Shalom.